All right, so now let's see this particular question. So this question is actually a continuation of the last one, right? So I highly recommend that you first attempt that particular question, you watch that particular video, and then you come back over here and then continue with this one, right? And I will attach the link of that particular question, the video of that, with this particular video, right? But you should first attempt that and then come over here, right? Okay, so now to just give you a recap of what we have in terms of the data, we are given with three tables over here: the driver table, the rights table, and the accepted rights table, right? Now that and these all these three tables are corresponding to a cab company, which is called the Hopper company, right? So this driver table basically holds which driver with what driver ID joined on what particular date this particular cab company, right? So for example, driver ID 10 joined on 10th of December 2019 and so on, right? That's what is given in the driver table. In the rides table, we have, the details of all the ride IDs, basically who requested those ride IDs and at what date were they requested, right? So that is the information that we are given with in the rides table. And then we have the accepted rides, which basically has the information of all the rides from this list of ride IDs, which actually got accepted by some of the driver, right? So that is what is given in the accepted rides table, and then the corresponding information about that individual ride, right? Logically also, whatever ride is given in the rides table, it is not guaranteed that those all those rides will be available in the accepted rides table as well, because obviously some of the rides might not get accepted at all, right? So that's why this will be a superset, and this, I mean, in terms of the ride ID, this list of ride ID in the rides table will be a superset, and this ride ID in the accepted rides table will only be a subset of it. And it is possible that some of the rights which are present over here are not present over here, right? But all the rights which are present in the accepted rights table will surely be present in the rights table, right? That is quite logical. Now what we need to do is we need to write a solution to report the percentage of working drivers, that is the working percentage for each of the month of only 2020 year, right? And this is the formula that they have given. So basically the percentage of working drivers is defined by number of drivers that accepted at least one ride during that month, right? Number of drivers basically is what we need to find, and divided by the total available drivers during that particular month, right? And this denominator, if you see the number of available drivers during that month, is actually the number of active drivers, right? That we actually calculated in the previous question. So it is the same thing. We just need to reuse that particular metric, number of active drivers for each month, to calculate this percentage month, right? And number of drivers that accepted at least one ride during the month is something that we can calculate over here, right? And then once we divide and multiply by 100, we will get the working percentage, which we have to report against each month of only 2020 year, right? Of for not no other year, but just all the months of 2020, right? So that's what we need to do. And also, like, it is given that if the number of available drivers during a month is zero, we consider the working percentage to be zero, right? And also we need to round the working percentage to the nearest two decimal places, right? So that is the question entirely. Now maybe you can just pause this video and try to think of a solution. And once you're done, you can just come back and check the solution here. Okay, so now to solve this particular question, so we are going to have a very similar approach, to what we actually had in the last question, right? So what we will do is, first of all, we will just calculate this particular metric, the numerator, right? So we will find the number of drivers that accepted at least one ride during each of the month, right? So for that, what we can do is we can just join these two tables, the rights table and the accepted rights table, right? And why we need to join, because the requested at date for each of the accepted ride over here, it is actually available in the rights table, right? So I can just join these two table on the ride ID, right? And then for each of the month from the requested at column, I can just find the count of the distinct driver ID, right, for each of the month. And that will essentially give me the number of distinct drivers that accepted at least one ride during each of the month, right? So that's what I can do. That will essentially give me the numerator, and then I can find the denominator, which is nothing but the active drivers uh, on each of the month of 2020, right? And for doing that, again, I can just follow the same strategy what we did in the last question. I hope you have already solved that, but just to give you a recap, what we can do is we can just first of all group by on the month of the joining date in the driver table, right? We can just group by on the month from the joining date, and then we can find the total number of drivers who actually joined on that particular month, right, on each of the month, right? That's what we can do. And once we have this total number of drivers who joined on each of the month from the joining date column, then we can find a running total for each of the month, right? We can find a cumulative sum basically by finding a running total till each of the month, and that will be essentially my active drivers till that particular month, right? Basically those will be the number of drivers who joined till that particular month, right? They might have joined before that particular month, but now since they have already joined till that particular month, that's what we need to calculate, right? To get the active drivers till that particular month, right? So that's why I will take a running total of all the uh, total drivers who joined on each of the month before that particular month, and that will give me the total active drivers on each of the month, right? So I hope it is clear, and that will give me the denominator. And now I just need to join these two result set that I derived like separately, the drivers that accepted at least one ride during the month, and this particular metric, the active drivers one, and I just need to join them on month, right? And then I just need to do this particular calculation to get this particular output, right? So this is the solution entirely. I hope you understood it. Now maybe we can just jump to the ID and write a query for this. All right, so now let's implement the query that we just discussed, right? So first of all, we need to find the total working drivers for every month, right? And for doing that, what we can do is we can just join the accepted rights table, right, with the rights table like this, right? And I can join this on, okay, let me just write join over here. Yeah, and now I can just join it on the ride ID, right, like this. And then what I can do is I can also put a filter only on year, 2020, because I'm only concerned with all the months of 2020, right? So this way I will just put a filter on year 2020. And then what I can do is I can just group by, month of requested date like this, right? And then I can just select this as well in my select statement over here and alias this as month. And now I can just take count of distinct driver IDs like this from my accepted rights table, right? There is something wrong with my keyboard. Just bear with me. Yeah. And then I can just say driver ID over here, right? Like this. And I can just rename this as working drivers to be clear, right? And if I run this and just check the interim output, for every month, right, whichever is available in my original data of accepted rights table, I get the total working drivers, right? And these working drivers are nothing but, those drivers, the distant count of those drivers who at least accepted one ride in that particular month, right? So that's what I'm getting over here. But now, as you can see, I'm not getting it for all the months, right? I'm only getting it for the months which are available in my accepted rights table, right? But for the ones which are not available in my accepted rights table, for which there was actually no driver who accepted even one ride for that particular month, I'm not getting any record, right? But I need to have those records for those particular months as well in my data. And for those months, I can have the working drivers to be zero corresponding, right? So that's what I need to do. And for doing that, what I can do is I can generate a sequence of all the months from 1 to 12. And then, I can left join as we always do. I can left join with that particular list of months with this particular data set and take the month number from that particular data set so that I have all the months, right, from 1 to 12. And then for whichever, since I'm doing a left join, wherever there is no month over here corresponding to any month, right? So I will have the working drivers as null, right? Because in left join, anyways, any column, any row which is not present in the left column will have nulls in all the columns, right? So that's why my working drivers will be null for all those, unmatching month, and I can just coalesce them to zero, right? So this is what we always do. This is what we did in the last question even. So I'm just trying to reiterate, right? So I can just create a CTE over here, right? Like this. And this will be a recursive CT. So first I will have an anchor member, select one as month, right? Because I have to start from the first month, and I can select 2020 as my year, like this, right? And I can union this with my recursive member, which will be nothing but select month plus one, because in every iteration basically, or in every recursive call, I just need to get the next month, right? And then I can just select the year as is, and I can select this from CT all months itself, right? And I have to do this till my month is actually less than 12, right? Because I have to generate from 1 to 12, right? And now what I need to do is I need to left join this particular CT with this particular query result, right? So what I can do is I can take this result set also in another CT for simplicity. So I will just call it as CT underscore working underscore drivers, right? Like this. And now I can just select, I can just join these two CTs and select, the working drivers from the combination. So what I'll do is I will select from my CT working drivers as A, and I will do a left join. Um, okay, sorry. So I will have to first put the all months table as the left table, because I have to take all the months basically, all the rows from my CT underscore all months. So I will take this as the left table, right? And then I can do a left join with the CT working drivers, right? Like this. And I will do this on A dot uh, month, right? Equal to B dot month, right? Like this. And then what I can do is I can just go on to select. I can select A dot year as well, right? And I can select A dot month, right? And then what I can do is I can just select the working drivers from my B table, which is the CT underscore working drivers, right? And now if I run this, for every month of year 2020, I will have, a record. But then for whichever month there was no record originally in the base data, I'm getting working drivers as null, right? So I just need to coalesce this to zero, right? So this will be very logical that, wherever we did not have any month of 2020 in the original data, we are saying that, the working drivers for that particular month is zero, right? Now, if you see this, we get for every year and every month, basically for every month of year 2020, we get the number of working drivers, and I can just rename this particular column back to working drivers, right? So now this is fine. So this is one metric. This will be my numerator, right? When I have to actually calculate my working percentage, I have to divide this particular metric by my active drivers for that particular month, right? So the numerator I have already calculated, right, which is this one. What now I have to do is now I have to calculate the active drivers, right? And to calculate the active drivers, the method is going to be the same what we followed in the last uh, problem, right? It was all about finding the active drivers. So we will just repeat that activity again over here. What I will do is I will just capture this particular intermediate result set in another CT. I can just call it as all months working driver maybe, right? Like this. And then I can just go on to calculate my active drivers, right? So for that, what I can do is I can select from my drivers table like this, right? And then I can group by the year part of the join date, right? And on the month part of the join date as well, right? So for every month, I'm going to get the count of the drivers who joined in that particular month. So for that, I'm just grouping by on the year and month, and I can select these two columns here as well. I can just alias this to year, alias this to month, right? Like this. And then I can just say count of one as my active drivers, right? For that particular month, for every month, right? So this is fine. And now what I can do is I can just maybe run this quickly and see if it is correct, right? So for every month, you know, whichever is again available in my drivers table, I have the total drivers who actually joined in that particular month, right? So this is not again the actual active drivers that we were defining while defining the problem statement. These are the drivers who actually joined in each of the month of year 2020 or in other years as well, right? So that's what it is. Now what I need to do is I again need to fill in for all the missing months of 2020, right? So again, what I can do is I can left join with my CT underscore all months, right? And I don't have to left join. I will have to full join over here. Why full join? Because as we did earlier also, I would also need the months from the year 2019, right? Or from any year previous to 2020, before 2020, because I'm going to find a running total. I'm going to find a cumulative sum till every month of 2020, right? And so for that, I will have to include, the total number of drivers who joined in any month in a year before 2020 as well, because they would have also been active, in 2020 then, because they joined before 2020, right? So I hope that makes sense. And so now what I can do is I can just put this particular result set also in a CT, right? I can call it as active drivers, right? Like this. And now what I can do is I can just select from my CT underscore drivers, right? As A. And let me just correct this typo over here, right? And now I will do a full join with my CT underscore all months, right? Call it B, and I will do this join on A dot year. Sorry about that. A dot year equal to B dot year, right? Like this. And also A dot month is equal to B dot month, right? Like this, right? And then what I can do is now I have to get the year, right? So in whichever row my year from the CT underscore drivers table is null, I will take it from the B table, right? The year, and wherever the the year is null in the CT underscore all months, I will take it from the A table, which is CT underscore drivers, right? So what I will do is I will use a coalesce over here like this, and I will take it from the A dot year, right? Otherwise, I will take it from B dot year, right? And I will call it as year, right? Like this. And this thing I will repeat for the month as well, right? Let me just start a new line from here, right? And I will just call it as month and alias this as month as well, right? This is what I'm going to do. And then what I can do is I can just get the count of uh, I can just get the active drivers from my uh, CT underscore drivers table again, right? So I can just select the active drivers from here, right? And again, I will coalesce this to 0, right? So that for whichever month, the active drivers is not available, it is null basically. I will just substitute it with a 0, right? And I can call it as active drivers again, right? Like this. Let me collapse this a bit, right? So now let me just run this. I hope there is no error. Yeah, there is an error, CT underscore drivers. Okay, yeah, so this should have been active drivers, not CT underscore drivers, like this, right? Now it should be fine. Okay, there is no active drivers. Yes, there is a typo again over here and here as well, right? Now if I run this, it should be fine. And now for all the months of year 2020, I will be getting a record. And wherever, for whichever month there was no record, there was no active driver at all, we would have got 0, right? As you can see essentially over here, right? So that's what we wanted to do, right? Now what I can do is I can just put this in a CT so that now I can just join it with the working driver CT that we created over here, right? And by the way, just let me just correct the spelling of all months over here, right? So now I can just create another CT over here and I can call it as all months active drivers, right? Like this, right? And now what I need to do is I need to take a running total, right? Basically, I need to find the cumulative sum of all the months before a given month, right? So that will give me the actual active drivers who are active, essentially in a given month. So for that, what I will do is now I will just select from my, uh, the CT underscore all months active driver table like this, right? And what I need to select is I need to select year, month, and I need to now do a sum of active drivers like this, and I have to do it over order by year and month, right? So this will give me a running total for for every month basically, right? And I can just rename this back to active drivers now. This will be my actual active drivers that we defined also while defining the problem. And now what I can do is, now I can just join it with my working drivers data set, right? So that I have one consolidated output, right? So now what I can do is, I can just put this in a subquery, this particular result set, and I can select from like this, call it A, and I can now inner join with CT underscore all months working drivers, call it B, and then I can join it on A dot year equal to B dot year, right? Right, and I can also join it on A dot month equal to B dot month like this, right? And now see what I can do is I can put a filter condition on my A dot year to be equal to 2020 only, right? Because if you see over here, we have already put a filter condition in the CT underscore working drivers for the year 2020. So we only have the data for all the months of working, only all the data for all the months of 2020 in the CT underscore working drivers. But when it comes to the active drivers, we haven't put that filter so far because we had to find the cumulative sum. And for that, we needed the data for the previous years as well, which are before the year 2020, right? But now since we have already found the cumulative sum for every month using the previous year's data as well. Now we can while we are actually joining it with the uh, working driver CT to find the overall output, now we can put this particular filter over here like this, right? And now what I can do is I can just select over here A dot month maybe, right? Because I don't need year over year in my final output. I just need the month because it is understood every month is for year 2020 only, right? And now what I can do is I can just maybe start a new line. And over here, now I need to divide my B dot working drivers by, A dot active drivers like this. And I can just alias this as working percentage. This is what we need to do. And see, now I have to convert one of the numerator or the denominator to float because this will be integer division by default. But I also have to retain the decimal values. So that's why I will just convert the the numerator maybe to float so that this division overall becomes a float division and not a integer division, right? And then what I can do is I can also multiply, this overall value with by 100, right? To get the percentage, right? And this should not be zero. Sorry about this. This should be float. I was thinking about something else and I just wrote it like this, right? And now what I need to do is we need to round this to 2 decimals, right? So over here, I can just round it to 2 decimal, this overall thing, and this should be it, right? Now, if I run this, I should get the correct output. So for every month, I'm getting the working percentage and I'm getting it till the 2 decimal precision, right? So this is what we wanted. Now there is just one small thing that is remaining over here. We actually have to handle a case where my active drivers is zero, right? So in that case, this will give you a divide by zero error, right? So you have to handle that divide by zero error, and I will leave that up to you, right? I mean, I will leave that as a homework for you. You can just try to handle that, and that will be the final step in this particular solution, right? So I hope you understood the solution well. And what I will do is, just to make sure that you see everything perfectly, I will just zoom in the query a bit, right, so that it is clearly visible for you. I know that I should have done that before actually starting to write, but I just noticed it now. So sorry about that, but this is the entire query, right? And I hope you understood it well, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.